Hi friends, I'm Meliora. Welcome to my channel. I have already made a fall perfumes video. Granted, it was last year and I still stand by those perfumes. So if you're really curious to know what are the most quintessential, the most fall-like perfumes in my collection, 100% still that list. So when I was thinking about how to really approach this kind of eye-roll worthy perfumes for fall type of cliche video that nevertheless we all like to watch, and that's how we kind of pick a lot of fresh and new ideas, I thought I would put exactly that kind of spin on it. I want to offer you 13, because October, spooky month, 13 amazing, very fall appropriate fragrances. There's no better time to start testing or wearing them or kind of getting to know them rather than autumn months. I very carefully went through all of my collection from like top to bottom shelves, and I really tried to get those that I think really fit into the atmosphere and the kind of rare, unique notes that anyone, and it's possible, but one would be unlikely to indulge in any other season. So without further ado, let me start. I've got this beautiful book, The Perfume Lover, not sponsored, bought it myself, by Denise Bellew, who is a fragrance reviewer and journalist, and I'm just going to be using this as my reference because I prepped and I saved all of the dry down blotters for us to reference when we're going to talk about these fragrances. The first one I'm going to start with is relatively new in my collection, and I decided not to discriminate just because it's something new to me. I already love this fragrance. I had a tester, so I had like quite some time to get familiar with it. So this is Juliette Has a Gun Mad Madame. I must say that the packaging here is very on point. It's very heavy bottle, the heavy black metal lid. It's like really well made, and it's kind of like, as you can see, it's matte dark red with kind of lacquered black thorns. So when it comes to the fragrance itself, Mad Madame. When it comes to the fragrance itself, if you just open all of the Fragrantica or any other kind of fragrance notes aggregator type of website and you just look at the descriptions or the accords, you'll find that a lot of these share a lot of accords and notes in common, which doesn't tell you really anything. Doesn't tell us much, let's say that. Doesn't tell us much about what's unique and different or similar between them. So for example, when I started kind of writing down notes just to kind of refresh my memory, I noticed that over like half of them shared the accords of being balsamic, woody, earthy, or aromatic. It can mean anything. Even when we're reading about the notes, sometimes the rose has like 1,000 facets. Neroli, same thing. Oud, same thing. So I'll do my best kind of not to indulge into just reading from the list of notes, but some people find it somewhat useful. Like some description is better than none, even if it's not really capable of telling you everything you need to know about the fragrance. This was a happy exception because the main line by Juliette Has a Gun has those very zesty, kind of sour white musks that I honestly can't stand. And this was one of the first fragrances by them that, even though it does contain a similar kind of tardy, kind of sour musks, they are really well hidden by these kind of powdery, kind of earthy, mossy type of patchouli, and it's very sweetened by rose. Let's see what else is. It's jasmine. They even say there's tuberose and peony here. Can't quite attest to that. I would say that what I feel is a lot of kind of these, a little bit dusty, a little bit kind of muddy patchouli, mossy rose that is very well rounded and slightly kind of like powdered up by, let's see, what could it be? Tolu Balsam, Vanilla Absolute Castoreum. Castoreum is probably one of those notes that really brings in the animalic notes without making it too indolic. To me, Madame is this beautifully retro gray kind of almost berry or raspberry type of fragrance, even though it doesn't really claim to have any berry notes in it. But I mean, it does have blackcurrant with amber and rose, so maybe that's it. It's just how delightfully mossy and rosy it is at the same time. It's one of the best types of non-green, non-sour type of patchouli and rose that I've encountered so far. Absolutely love it. A wonderful perfume, specifically for wet, kind of like this uncomfortable transitional weather. The next gem that I think is just about, it's like made to be worn during the fall, is Calypso by Robert Piguet. In essence, it is basically a slightly damp, a little bit swampy amber patchouli with kind of like an echo of mandarin oil, maybe a little bit rose / geranium kind of accord. What's really alluring to me about it is the kind of like muted, demure, swampy quality of this ambery rose accord. And it's also very skin-like. It's very nude in its essence. It's close to the skin. I find that this kind of dynamic quality that I kind of like, you don't feel it, and then you just whoop and you fall into it immediately, is really great representation of what they were going for. So Calypso is you know, the mystery in the allure of nymphs and like these historic creatures that would attract and kill travelers. Beautiful, but very demure. So if you're really looking for something a little bit louder on that spectrum, they do share a lot of these kind of seductive but slightly closeted type of sensuality, and I would say Madame is a little bit louder and Calypso is a little bit more demure, a little bit more understated, but yet it has this like black hole within like 3 centimeters of your skin type of quality. Beautiful, and I feel like there's almost no better time for it than fall. The next category would be fragrances that have subtle or very prominent nutty type of flavor. I feel like this is when we really just turn our heads back to like honey, nuts, kind of almond paste, anything with hazelnuts, walnuts, or nuts in general. I think just runs beautifully for breakfast, dinner, dessert, anything during fall. And I found 2 perfumes in my collection that one has prominent nut note and this one is a little bit more subtle. So the first one is a little bit more subtle, where the nut note to me is like an artifact of the vetiver oil that is in it, is Madrona by House of Matriarch. So Madrona is a ode to a lavender. This is almost a gourmand lavender, yet what they say about on the website is this aromatic, woody, and spicy. The nuts are not really written in the description here, but I just very evidently, very brightly feel this nutty, creamy, kind of almost oily note. I think it's probably the combination of slightly salt, like the salty notes with the vetiver oil, that makes me think of roasted nuts. But for me, the impression is definitely there, and that's something that I really enjoy. A lot of people say that it reminds them of some kind of maybe even lavender latte. I don't really feel any kind of coffee or coffee shop type of notes in it. If you're thinking about certain desserts and kind of my association with nuts gives you that impression, maybe. But to me, it's a gourmand, nutty, lavender vetiver type of fragrance. It is very potent. It really lasts a long time. It's one of those where you only need 1 or 2 sprays. The next one I feel should be like in the top list of all the bloggers. I'm at loss why people don't talk about it more than they should. This is L'Artisan Parfumeur Méchant Loup, or a big bad wolf, I guess, in the translation. So it's actually a Bertrand de Chaffour work of 1997, believe it or not. Let me just refresh it slightly. Here, without a doubt, we have a most beautiful but slightly sharp interpretation of honey plus hazelnut. It's delicious, but there is a reason why it's called Big Bad Wolf. This perfume has teeth. It has this sudden sharp edge to it. It's almost, I don't want to say metallic because I don't feel metallic notes. But imagine if you can, the combination of honey and hazelnut that is kind of like squooshed, condensed together in the two-dimensional picture that is clawed in the wood. Because it is woody, it is nutty, it is honey, but it has teeth. It's kind of sharp. So yeah, if wolves made art on the bark of trees of the forests they reside in, that would be it. It's very particular. It's a true niche creation, and what I love about L'Artisan Parfumeur creations that they always have a little bit of this kind of a twister, you know, like a sudden, unexpected turn of events. And Méchant Loup definitely has it. If we're thinking about the classical kind of honeybee type of scent, I know that Zoologist is very popular. I know that Kilian, I think Back to Black, or maybe some other versions of Kilian perfumes, they kind of exploit the more traditional gourmand sweet on sweet on sweet on sweet, and kind of sugar powder is sweet and baked, you know, with I don't know, with berries kind of sweet, and added caramel kind of sweet type of honey. This is a different take on the gourmand honey and nuts type of story. And I find this to be way more edgy, way more contemporary, and I would say seductive. I like that the edginess and the teeth of this perfume doesn't contradict, but rather adds to the allure of these sweet gourmand notes. So, Méchant Loup, another beautiful nutty perfume by L'Artisan Parfumeur, perfect for fall, just amazing. While we're talking about gourmands, I intentionally excluded most gourmands from this particular set because I think when we're talking about edible type of smells, it's a slightly different category. To be honest, not my favorite, but I have some favorites in that. If you're curious, let me know in the comments below and I'll make like a special edition for the best gourmands that I know of. But when it comes to the quintessential perfumes that are worth exploring in fall weather, I always think about gourmands with a sharper, woodier, or kind of like a prominent edge, a prominent facet that really takes them away from purely edible story. And the one that I want to talk about today is Vetiver, or Vetiver, I think Vetiver by Mona Diorio. I think the stress depends on from which language the name comes from. So I might be quite alone in this because the official description says that this is a fresh yet calm and dry vetiver. Yet to me, This is spicy, warm, earthy, woody, almost sweet, almost like ambery sweet vetiver. And I'm a little bit at loss of why it would be called dry and fresh, because to me dry is something that gourmands just can't be by definition. But what's even more interesting is the description of this perfume by the brand itself, because this time I guarantee you we're not gonna get any kind of guys flashing anything from anywhere. If you know from which video I'm referencing, leave a comment below with a wink. So yeah, I want to read you the description because I just want to be fair in terms of that interpretation may vary, and it's always important to know where the brand was coming from when they create a certain fragrance. And I really like this one, so I think it's worth reading. The Meliora Vetiver. In the top notes, blue ginger from Madagascar creates the olfactory hallucination of having the fresh root under your nose. You know, before they actually read that there is blue ginger in here, I didn't even feel it, and I feel, at least to my nose, that impression fades very quickly, but you know, it's there. Virginia cedar and clary sage absolute add a slightly bitter herbaceous accord with a momentary glint of mint. Okay, I haven't got any glints of anything minty, but I agree that it's a very green, spicy scent. So something herbaceous sounds about right to me. It's just not the kind of herbs that they are referencing. In terms of ginger and mint, I honestly, no, at least not to my nose. Vetiver then creates a sleight of hand impression of both dryness and freshness, like freshly steeped spiced tea with grapefruit zest just beginning to release its oils. The hesperidic note, concentrated rather than juicy and sparkling, adds a lovely counterpoint to the subtle but rich tonka labdanum that I can attest to. And that's what makes me think of gourmand, the kind of gourmand that is based on tonka bean. Labdanum, which add weight and roundness to the perfume. Hallelujah, yes. This is a very rounded yet herbaceous green gourmand. To me, this is a very rare type of gourmands. I don't see them a lot, and I find that the fact that this is based on vetiver, but it gives you so many different other facets and impressions and kind of subtleties to the fragrance, how it opens, how it lives on the skin. That's what makes this vetiver stand out from all of the others that I have in my collection. And the kind of roundness and heaviness of these notes together with, what else did I miss anything? Nutmeg. This is way more oriental than Vetiver Oriental by Serge Lutens that I also have and also love. In comparison, that vetiver is almost office-like and very put together and strict. This vetiver really makes a beautiful, rounded and smooth swirl of the earthy yet balsamic and spicy notes, and this is why I think it's absolutely perfect for late fall. Another vetiver that I think is worth trying in fall, but this one probably is kind of year-round type of winner, is Etat Libre d'Orange Semi-Modern Vetiver or Fat Electrician. If you're curious, just go to the website of Etat Libre d'Orange or Fragrantica or any other perfume aggregator and just read the brand's description. It's kind of hilarious of a story. They came up with a whole like alter ego persona for this perfume. I'm just going to talk to you about the scent itself. The Semi-Modern Vetiver or Fat Electrician is, to me, essentially a nude perfume with slightly sharp kind of metallic notes. They claim that they got it from various components of olive leaves. And the vetiver that here verges on the border of vanilla milk. This is so skin-like, almost like certain musks can be. This is so skin-like, creamy, milky, that it's hard to recognize that vetiver could go that way. Most of the time, vetiver is very prominent in a lot of so-called masculine scents, the fougères, a lot of different compositions that need the kind of thick, rooty, maybe oily green note. But here it's been kind of tamed to the degree of a milky souffle of a vetiver. And to me, this is the kind of perfume that could get you closer to liking vetiver as a note in perfumes if you're coming from a purely standpoint of kissable, huggable, very soft, very nudie, very complimentary type of perfumes that you can wear anytime, anywhere, in any circumstances. If you really don't like loud scents, and if you're very timid about ever crossing the territory toward masculine scents, God forbid, even though it's completely made up. Anyway, this is something to try. To me, this is a quintessential nude perfume for fall. Granted, I think it can be worn in any type of weather or climate or season, with maybe exception of very, very hot, humid weather, because the kind of creaminess and muskiness and softness of it could really go into more like a BO, like body odor type of stink, if you wish, rather than the beautiful light souffle type of creaminess that you can afford in a cooler type of weather. But if you're looking for fall nude, Fat Electrician by Tatley Bergeron. Now I want to challenge the notion of classics, you know, the kind of category of creation that everybody like ab initio respects and nobody watches, nobody smells, nobody wears. It's like those like Fellini films that almost everybody heard something about but nobody really watched from the beginning to the end unless they took certain like classes in their undergrad. So those kind of perfumes. A lot of people who I know for more like kind of European side of the market are very well aware of these perfumes. They even have them in their collections. The kind of the American/Canadian side, I find that almost everybody has heard of them, and you can count people like, I probably can count people on one hand that I know that own those classics. Not only own them, but they also wear them. The well-known, but for some reason not worn classic that I really want to offer you for fall is L'Heure Bleue by Guerlain. I got myself a refill bottle because I heard there's a conspiracy. Here's our conspiracy minute. So there is a conspiracy theory that a lot of these more classic Guerlain perfumes, since they've been so many times reformulated, nobody even knows how many times and which like year batch is different from the other year, that if you buy them in the refills, you're more likely to get an older version that is better. I'm just like, I'm not condoning any of that, but guilty as charged. I got myself a refill of Eau de Parfum L'Heure Bleue. Obviously it can go to a vintage route, but vintage perfumes almost always suffer from a very natural chemical degradation problem of their components, and they almost never smell like they ought to when they were created. Anyway, L'Heure Bleue, original recipe, was created in 1912, mind you. And this is the kind of stuff that really reads incredibly modern Gucci / niche. I brought up Gucci because of their Memoir perfume that is really unorthodox approach to luxury perfume, which is like a very dry, herbaceous chamomile type of smell. Some people like it, some people don't, but you can't blame it for being an original. It's a very original perfume. So this is that, but taken to a level 100 times multiplied in terms of complexity, the level of interest, the level of depth and movement. So a lot of people know the story of the perfume, that it's made to symbolize a kind of like murky, somewhat melancholic stage of night, kind of evening turning into night, you know, right that moment when you can still see the light from the sun, but you also can start seeing the stars and the moon rising. The interesting quality of this perfume is not even the notes, because again, like vanilla, tonka bean, iris, benzoin, rose, carnation, tuberose, anise, bergamot, all of those notes sound familiar. But the profile of L'Heure Bleu is so unmistakable that if you try it and you realize that this is like the beginning of 20th century type of creation, anytime you'll try anything in remotely close in niche area, you will know where the roots are coming from. That's why a lot of people collect vintage or kind of like older Guerlain perfumes, because a lot of them really set the stage for generations of other perfumes to come. The L'Heure Bleu to me is a very powdery, melancholic violet type of perfume. It has this slightly, I don't want to say moldy, but slightly kind of dusty green patchouli mossy quality to it that makes me think of a librarian's shipper, but it's not a shipper. Like the classic definition of like citrusy, zesty, bergamoty notes with a patchouli or mossy type of basis, it doesn't quite fall into that category, but every once in a while I feel that this is a it's kind of like the grandma of a younger shipper type of grandchild. And I love it for the kind of contemplative and elegant nature of it. It's not trying to seduce you, it's not screaming at you, and yet it has all of the longevity, movement, and volume that you would want from a high quality, long lasting perfume. Real gem, one of the rare older type of perfumes that to me still reads very well in the contemporary niche world. If you're coming from just like the designer spectrum, and it might feel a bit much, but if you're curious about what the classic perfumery is all about, I would definitely get your hands on the L'Heure Bleu, at least to expand your horizons into kind of like dab into the whole world that deserves to be revisited.